Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
How you doing, Barbie?
I'm so good, Barbie. I'm so good because we are talking about Barbie today.
The movie of the summer and the year
The movie
and the
of
decade
the century, babe.
and my life.
We're going to try today, but there's no way for me to put into words what this movie has meant to me and how it has fundamentally changed me over the past 24 hours since I've seen it. Welcome to our review of Barbie. So, before we get started, Kaitlin, how was your week? Did you have a nice week so far?
Well, I don't remember Monday through Friday, but Saturday was great. It was great, and Sunday was cool too.
I mean, you spent some of your week at the Barbie movie.
All I remember is Barbie.
I mean, in a way, that's a good thing because I do feel like I left that movie with a very changed outlook on my life, and maybe that's
Same.
not permanent, but it is at least it's so far it is permanent to the extent that like I got home and there was a giant gaping hole in my ceiling that water was pouring out of, and it didn't faze me as much as I think it would have had I not gone and seen the Barbie movie.
Right. Barbie just makes everything better.
Yeah, she changed me. She changed my life. She made me think about the beauty of being human, and sometimes humans have giant gaping holes in their ceiling because housing policy in the U.S. And she made me feel better about it.
I'm so happy for you. So we will be talking about Barbie, but one of us did in fact do the Barbenheimer double feature.
Yeah.
And that one of us is you, Miss Emberlin. So please, I haven't seen Oppenheimer. I do want to see it. But you did Barbenheimer. Tell me what your experience was like. Which one did you see first? How do the two movies, they're not like made to fit together, but what I've heard is that they kind of unintentionally do kind of go together because they have like similar themes somehow between Barbie and then the man who created the atomic bomb.
It's so interesting that there's so much crossover between them.
But including horses, correct?
Including horses. Oh my God.
Even the horses made it into Barbenheimer. Perfect crossover material.
The reason men are the way they are is because they're all secretly closeted horse girls.
I love that so much. So tell me, what was your experience? What did you see first? Let's start there.
I saw Barbie first, but then I saw Oppenheimer later in the day.
Oh, interesting take.
Yes, and it wasn't intentional. It was more just that the availability of tickets lined up such that it was easier for me to see Barbie earlier in the day. The seats were better than at the end of the day and vice versa. I think to most people, my suggestion would probably be to do Oppenheimer first, Barbie second, because the impending doom you feel after Oppenheimer can probably only be sullied by the humanity of the Barbie movie.
Even the Barbie movie is heavy too, but at least it's not atomic bomb heavy.
That's the thing is you said like, oh, I don't know if I could go by myself to see Oppenheimer. I don't know if I could go by myself to see Barbie now knowing the context, which we'll talk about more in a moment. But that said, they were both very good movies. Different kinds of good, but to your point that they were very similar, you're exactly right that they were in a lot of ways about the same thing. What happens to men when they don't adequately communicate and express themselves and embrace their emotions and like the repercussions of that. And I learned that last night from someone on TikTok who brought that up just after I finished the movie, and my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Because, and I won't spoil Oppenheimer for anyone because they came here for a Barbie review only, and you haven't seen it yet, Kaitlin, but it is really fascinating how a lot of what happens to Oppenheimer later in the movie is because of some real petty shit.
Really?
Yes. But also, I would say the one benefit I think of watching Oppenheimer after Barbie is that I think I have a really different perception of the women in the Oppenheimer film now that I've seen Barbie first. Like, because Barbie really is a movie about, the experience, both beautiful and horrifying, of womanhood. And to see the women in this movie portrayed the way they were, like Kitty Oppenheimer, for example, his wife, she's really portrayed throughout the movie as like kind of like an angry alcoholic, but there's layers to that, right? Because she's also a wife and a mother in the early 1930s and 40s and 50s who has like all of this pressure on her individually to be everything for her husband. And the movie's not really about her and doesn't really touch on that. But I found myself thinking a lot more about that than I think I would have had I not seen Barbie first. So that's something.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Let's talk about Barbie now.
Let's talk about Barbie!
We've waited long enough. Kaitlin, what are your immediate reactions to this movie?
First of all, everyone was wearing pink in my theater, and it was the most magical experience ever. And I'm not even like exaggerating. So I went with my friend, and we were both in our own cute little pink outfits. Like, we were like ready, like we got together beforehand, we did our makeup, our hair, and everything. It was an event, baby.
Yes.
And so we park our car at the movie theater, and the first thing we see is this other woman get out of her car, and she's in like this adorable like pink like sweatsuit like outfit, and it was so cute, and she had like really blonde long hair, so she was just Barbie, and we both like, my friend and I were like, oh my god, look at her, this is great. And I was like, oh my god, this is the energy I want to see. Then we get out of the car, and I see ahead of us people walking into the theater, pink shirts, pink dresses, all these outfits. I was like, oh my god, this is incredible. And then we get inside the theater, and the theater itself is decorated in like the lobby. It had like cute decorations hanging from the ceiling. There was a bar that you could get drinks at this theater, and they had like a Barbie specific drink, and everybody was in line. Everyone, again, wearing just pink outfits. It's just adorable. And they also had like a big backdrop that you could take photos at that was all pink with like the Barbie posters and everything. And it was just, I've never been so excited to just walk into a movie theater before. Like, just the fact that everyone was there for the same thing. And I'm a girly who loves a collective experience. I love even just watching shows at the same time as people. Like, it makes me so happy because I'm like, we're all doing this. Like, with strangers you don't even know, you both came to the conclusion to do the same thing at the same time. And it was just the fact that so many people all had the same idea of like, no one said, okay, when we go to the Barbie movie, we're all gonna wear pink. It was just kind of like a thing that everyone collectively decided, and everyone did it. The theater was packed. Everyone was wearing it pink. Again, it was beautiful. Someone brought their Barbies, and I saw them like hold up their Barbies as it was starting to be like excited. It was adorable. It was just wonderful. The groups of women that came in, like the friend groups, the families that came together of all like coordinating, like there was the row in front of us had like 10 people who all came in together. They all were taking their pictures of their whole group and everything. It was just like, it was so exciting. The movie didn't even start yet, and I already wanted to cry just because of like everyone just being so happy, and everyone's complimenting each other like on their outfits. We all know that we're all here together. It was so sweet and lovely, and I want to do it again so bad, but there's just something about like the magic of like that first night,
one time
of everyone doing this, and it was awesome. It was so cool.
I think this is a special movie too because there are layers to that, right? Because it's not it's not just everyone. I mean, it's great that like everyone is there to see the same movie, but then the other part of this is like it's a lot of young girls and women and mothers and daughters. What I really loved about yesterday is like, I don't know any of the other women or girls in the theater, but we're all crying together. We're all laughing at the same things together. We're all nodding along when something happens that is deeply relatable. That to me is everything, right? It's everything. It is like an in-person retweet. There's something so deeply validating about that. I just called collective experiences an in-person retweet. I feel like I'm gonna probably get flack for that later, and I don't love that. At some point in my life, I stopped thinking about social media experiences in terms of like their real life counterparts, and started thinking the opposite way about real life experiences and their social media counterparts, which goes to show you how much I've been outside of my house in the past 3 years. But yeah, like I agree with you. It was like such a great experience till where like everywhere I went yesterday, I went and saw this movie in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., and everybody was decked out. Like the entire street was full of people in bright pink, and there were like so many places that had like pink advertisements and like specials that were Barbie themed. You just got the sense that it was almost like a festival.
That's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that for a movie in such a long time. There were like so many Barbie themed and like Barbenheimer themed parties this week. My neighbor actually invited us to one, and we couldn't go. But when I got home that night, there was just like a trail of glitter like down the hallway, and I was like, yes, it's happening. A friend of mine actually just told me that a very similar thing happened in the early 2010s for the double release of The Dark Knight and Mamma Mia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know that. So, like,
No.
these two blockbuster films apparently premiered at the same time. And I don't think the obsession was as great because the Barbie marketing team, like, they're doing the most. But, like, it was the same thing where it was, like, everyone wanted to see these two movies. So a lot of people treated it as a double feature because you had, like, the fun party movie with ABBA. And then you had the dark, mysterious movie with Christian Bale and Heath Ledger. And you just kind of did both.
This.
Yes.
That's so cool. There's something about things starting as a meme, but like one thing, and especially with like our age group specifically, is that if there's one thing that we do, it's we commit to the bit. We say we're going to do this, and then the second it comes, we're still going to do it. Like when they announced the fact that Barbie and Oppenheimer were coming out at the same weekend, and immediately everyone's like, Barbenheimer double feature, baby. It's still this weekend, so many people went and did the double feature. Like the meme of it all, like the collective group commitment to we're gonna do a Barbenheimer double feature because isn't that hilarious? That I feel like does wonders for movies like this. So, and then I had a coworker today bring up the idea of the studios next year are going to try and repeat this, but they're not going to be able to because it's not organic and it's going to be forced, and it's not going to be the same because you need to let people decide that, not once again be advertised to be told to do something.
That's such a good point because I feel like we have this problem a lot with like ideas that are not original. We try to recreate them over and over and over again because of, I don't know, greed. And they never work out quite the way that they do when everything happens organically and when people all come together and collectively decide on something. And there's like a democratic element that's driven purely by entertainment and joy and humor and not by money. So I think it's really funny that you say that because what is that going to be? Like,
I don't know, but you got to let things happen. I think it's okay for things to be a once in a lifetime thing, or like we had one really good movie, and just because it did well does not mean that it needs a sequel.
The Five Nights at Freddy's Bratz the movie double feature. Like, what are you doing?
Five Brats at Freddy's.
Five Brats at Freddy's. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about like the phenomenon of the movie in our immediate reactions, but in terms of the film itself and your immediate reactions to the film, I don't know about you, but I don't think I stopped crying at all.
Yeah.
Like, I think I knew it was going to, we all knew it was going to be a great movie. We walked into the theater and the guy that scanned our tickets was like, it's literally like Legally Blonde. And I was like, okay, it's going to be like Legally Blonde. Okay. And then it was so much more existential than that. Yeah. And I don't know why I didn't think that was going to happen to me. I was not expecting to be gutted by it. And I've seen all of Greta's movies, like all of them, including Nights and Weekends. And I don't know why I thought I would have like a perfectly fun and simple time enjoying this movie. Like, I know Greta. I know what she does to people. Like, like I know her. Like, I know myself. And I don't know why I thought I was going to, like, walk into that movie and walk out feeling fun and funky and not at all displaced and in need of an emergency call with my therapist.
Not to be controversial, but I don't think I've ever seen a Greta Gerwig film until this weekend when I watched Barbie. I have not seen Little Women. I have not seen Lady Bird. I cannot name another movie that she's done other than those two. But I know that the reaction that you have had to them, which is why part of me was just like, I wouldn't be surprised if this movie's a little bit more than what it seems to be. And so when Barbie like started to have her like existential crisis, I was like, uh-oh, is this fucking play about us? It's like, and by us I mean me. Miss had an existential crisis 2 weeks ago at 3 a.m. Like, I was like, oh no, Miss Greta, what are you doing to me personally? What are we doing? And it was a fun and very fun girly pop movie, but also it was like one of those, like, this was made for everyone, but also I feel like specifically for those of us like in this stage of life where it's just like, what are we doing? We're not doing enough. I should have done this by this age already, and I don't know where I'm going from here. Like, it was so personal to me, and it was one of those, like, I'm so glad I saw this movie now. Yeah. I get to go see Barbie at 25. This is perfect. This is great. Yes, exactly. This is the experience I needed it to be. So it was so much, but it was it was perfect to me. Like, it wasn't perfect, but it was perfect.
In my theater, Greta Gerwig actually walked out onto the stage, pointed at me, and said, "You," and then walked out.
You. And she gave no information.
Yeah. She's like, "This is about you, babe." And then she left. She was like, "That's it. All right, goodbye.
Nice
I'm going to get back on my plane, head back to wherever, LA." I think I want to take us down the road, because I think we're already heading down this road, whether we wanted to be or not, of talking about like some of the key themes in the movie, because it wasn't just girly pop. It was also girl fail and girl suffer and girl doomed by the narrative. I'd love to hear some of your initial reactions to learning that this movie really is about the experiences of girlhood and womanhood and how they shape us.
It was kind of like one of those, like, you learn as you go. Like, I wasn't just like, oh, this is going to be existential Barbie and it's going to be all depressing and deep and blah, blah, blah. Because it was still, like, so funny for a long time in the beginning, and I'm just like, ha ha ha, I'm having a great time, but I'm starting to think about my
Wait,
life.
am I thinking?
Am I thinking deeply about this funny haha movie?
Like, am I having feelings? I didn't come here to feel. I came here to...
There were so many times where like, oh. No. So like when Barbie's trying to like find the girl that's playing with her, which I love the concept already. It was just like when Weird Barbie was like, you need to go find who's playing with you and you know, fix this. I was like, I love the concept of the two worlds coexisting and like the Barbies knowing that they're Barbies. And I loved how like their speech patterns reflected it. Like you saw that immediately with their first trailer when it's just like, you want to be girlfriend boyfriend? And
yes.
I'm not really sure. I'm like, this is how little girls talk when they're playing with their Barbies. This is perfect. I love it. And I always kind of wondered, I was like, how that was going to fit in with the real world aspect. I kind of saw it coming where it's like, it's not going to be the girl that she thinks it is going to be. I'm like, oh, maybe it's like an older girl. I'm thinking it's going to be like a girl in her 20s, like being like, 20s are scary. I don't like this. But I loved so much that it was her mom. That was like longing for the relationship that she used to have with her daughter before she started growing up and being in middle school, high school, whatever age she was. Yeah. And to like also long for her own girlhood where she didn't have to be an adult who was supposed to be a career woman who was supposed to do this, this, and this. Like there was so much pressure on her. She just wanted to play with her dollies. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. I was just so captivated by that story, especially like how it might play out between the mother and the daughter, because I am nothing but weak for a parent-child relationship. This movie, I walked out of here and I was like, I need to go hug my mommy. You know?
Yeah. I wasn't expecting a lot of the maternal elements of this theme, which again, I don't know why that was, because Greta's whole thing is like mommy issues. Like, it's like I forgot that Lady Bird happened to me, and I just was like walked into the theater with the expectation that it wouldn't happen to me again, and then it did. I really like I think the aspect I like most of it is that it is like, yes, like the dolls are all being played with by somebody. Like when Ken runs into the waves and then bounces off of them, he goes flipping through the air like a little girl, like a child would flip a doll as it's flying through the air. There's just something so silly about that. Or like when on the second day when Barbie is starting to really feel the weight of death and doom, she gets dropped when she's trying to float out of her dream house. There's just something so sad about that, because I think it also coalesces well with the experience of girlhood. Not just for the person playing with the doll, but for the doll itself. Barbie loves her life and she wants nothing to change. But when it does change, there are two distinct things that happen. When she wakes up in the morning, the way little girls do sometimes, she realizes that something is different about her. And that's how it feels, right? Like one day you wake up and you're having your period. And it's literally just happens just like that. One day you wake up and you look down and you have boobs. So like her breath was bad and her feet were flat. Like all of these things happened to her almost overnight, it felt like, which is very much the experience of girlhood. The flip of the switch that says one day you're a girl, the next day you are in danger. And then that's where the other piece of this comes in, when she goes to the real world and she's immediately objectified and stared at and made to feel unsafe and doesn't feel fixable until she comes back to Barbie world and remedies this whole situation with Ken and finds her community and finds herself again. Which, if that's not like adulthood, if that's not life wrapped up in a neat pink bow, then I don't know what is. There's something so relatable about that, to the extent that it's like painful. And I remember leaving the movie wondering to myself, because I can't remember, when was the last time that I played with my Barbies? Where are they? Where are my Barbies? You know, like, I don't know. I know they're probably in my basement at home someplace in my parents' house, or, you know, somewhere. But where are they? And what was the day what day did I put them down? When did I make that conscious decision? And, like, what made me think about that? What was happening in my life that made me feel like I no longer had the time or worthiness to play with them?
Man, I'm sad again.
I'm sorry. This is gonna be a mixed bag, okay? We're gonna have some really fun conversations about this movie. We're also going to cry a couple of times, probably.
When Barbie entered the real world and she immediately felt self-conscious, I was just like, yeah, after she leaves the safe home of Barbie Land, because that's what it is. Like, you don't realize it until you are an adult and you think back on it. Like, I don't know, like you go and see a movie made about one of your childhood toys and that makes you think about this, but like, you are a little girl and everything's fun and chill and you have no worries except for like who's gonna play with me on the playground tomorrow at recess. And then one day, all of a sudden, without even realizing, you're overly aware of your body and what you look like and why people are looking at you and why they're looking at you differently. And they're not looking at you in a fun way sometimes, you know, and not in a way that you want. Because it's like you go from a girl to almost like a sexualized thing in most cases, where it's just like, oh, I have boobs now, and all of a sudden that gives you a right to look at me. Like, no. Yeah,
you're objectified overnight, and it's like, I don't know, it makes me think back to like every gross joke I've ever heard where a guy says, oh, well, she's 18 or she's legal, and it's like, but she's still a girl, you know? Like,
she's still a girl.
I think about this a lot.
Still a person, like
yeah. Oh, also, she's a human being.
She's a human being, not an object.
Yeah. This is a good time for us, I think, to pivot to America Ferrera's speech, Gloria's speech in the movie. After the Kens have taken over, Barbie has sort of given up, and she's sitting crying flat on her face in Weird Barbie's house and talking about how she doesn't feel pretty enough, not smart enough, not enough. And it's so heartbreaking. Gloria gives this great speech about why she's so tired of watching all the women in her life feel like they're not enough. And she says, I'm so tired of watching myself and every single woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. I think while the argument can be made that a lot of what is being said is surface level, to the extent that, like, a lot of us, especially in younger generations, are very used to having nuanced conversations about feminism and about the role of women in society, we also have to remember that there is a subset of the population that either A, doesn't, for many fucked up reasons, ingest a lot of knowledge about the female experience, but then there's also a subset of the population that would consider everything Gloria said in her speech extreme. Like, the notion that women are people is considered radical to some people.
Crazy.
And, like, that's the point, right? And, like, that is, like, part of what the movie is getting at, is that men are so socialized to dehumanize women that to hear Gloria say such profound things, to hear such incredible monologuing from America Ferrera is kind of a novel thing for them. I would love to live in a world where Barbie feels like a moderate feminist take, but I feel like we haven't moved past that yet. So I'm, at the very least, very grateful that this was a monologue that was delivered for a movie that is making box office history. And I hope it happens again and again and again and again. Is there more to be said? Always, always, always. But I do really appreciate what was said in her speech, like, so much.
I just love that, like, one of the messages with her speech, because she's saying, like, I can't remember the entire speech because I was just kind of like watching it with my jaw on the floor, but like one of the parts that I remember was like, you have to be skinny, but you can't say that you have to be skinny because you got to be healthy, but that means you have to be thin, and it's just like, you can't there's like, you can't win no matter what you do, you can't win. And I love that, like, from that whole speech, and then part of Gloria's character is that you don't have to go out and be the very best at everything you do. Like, you can take that pressure off. Like, you don't have to do something insane or extraordinary with your life in order for it to be like a life well lived. Like, you can just simply exist a normal life and that is enough. Like, I loved how she's just like, just give me a Barbie that wants to be a mom, or a Barbie that is just going about her daily life. I was just like, yeah, give me ordinary Barbie. Like, it doesn't have to, you don't have to reach for the moon every single time, which I think is kind of nice.
I love that this movie gives you the perspective of a capitalist immediately after she says that, which is like, that's a terrible idea. But then once the CEO of Mattel is presented with the numbers that suggest otherwise, he's like, that's a great idea. Because it's the abnormal that fuels capitalism. For someone to say that ordinary is enough would be completely against the laws of capitalism in this executive's eyes. And I think that's really funny because it totally plays into this idea that like mass consumerism is in part fueling women to feel like they're never enough, which is crazy that was something that was, I mean, maybe the bar is low, but to me, that's crazy that that's something that someone pointed out in a blockbuster movie. And that's the thing about both of these films, like both Barbie and Oppenheimer, is I feel like there is a level of nuance and self-awareness injected into both films that I wasn't expecting, you know? Like, when you say this movie is like Legally Blonde, or you say this movie is like Clueless, both movies have this great undercurrent of social commentary, especially Clueless, but it's never quite as overt and digestible as I think it has been in this film. And I love that. I love that there is like a certain level of understanding that this film harbors about how it's harmful. I mean, there's a whole scene where Barbie shows up in the cafeteria to meet Gloria's daughter, and Gloria rips her apart. Like, totally fucks her up. She got her shit rocked, okay? Barbie gets her shit rocked, you know?
And by the Bratz dolls, essentially, is what they were, which is hilarious.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, the things that she was saying to Barbie were true. Like, there was an acknowledgement that, like, the commodification of women that Barbie's body image has had on young girls. And I think that's really interesting because, I don't know. I mean, if I were Mattel, I would not want to sign off on that, you know? So I think it's nice. Part of me is suspicious. Part of me is like, what's the gimmick here? But there's a part of me that's like, okay, it's interesting that you allowed that truth to be told.
Yeah, there was a lot of like digs at Mattel in this movie that I was like, I can't believe they were allowed this. Like, I can't believe that they were like, yeah, you can say that about us.
Marvel could never. Let's just put that out there. Let's just put out there.
Anything owned by Disney could never.
I really adore this like new, very, I think, intellectual brand of storytelling that we're getting from people like Greta Gerwig, because like it's like the stories are just so much more complex. That is not to say that there isn't a place for like movies that are about nothing, but I can only handle so many Marvel movies about nothing before I'm like, okay, I'd like to stop having Marvel movies about nothing, please. I've had enough. Like, that can only just happen so many times, you know?
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that you loved, like, the motherhood aspects of the film. I found myself thinking a lot of the time about, like, what this film must mean to girls that didn't have great mother figures. Because I know a lot of girls that walk out of this film saying, I needed to immediately go hug my mom. But I wonder what the experience was like watching this film for girls that didn't have that character. Was there someone else in their life that filled that spot? Like, do they have a very different sense of identity because they didn't have somebody who stood by them and watched them keep growing and moving forward? That aside, when we learned that Gloria's memories are the memories that Barbie is connecting with, it's heartbreaking because every mother is just a girl, you know? So to see her returning to the Barbies after so long, and this time that you mentioned where her daughter still liked playing with them, and when she was a girl even, was just so heartbreaking.
It is, and it made me think of that scene in Turning Red where the main character, like, she goes and she gets to give a younger version of her mom a hug. I'm like, let me do that. When you say, oh, this is making 12-year-old me happy. I have firmly, like, adapted that concept of, oh, I'm doing this for younger me. Like, younger me would be having a ball, and just because you're still that person that you were all those years ago. You're just taller, you know? To just like allow myself to enjoy things. If someone's just like, why are you liking this Barbie movie? It's like, because 7-year-old me would have a fucking ball and she would be having a great old time. And I'm doing this for her.
Yeah.
For me. And it just makes me really happy. So that's why, like, I was talking about the collective experience earlier of just like all of these people in the theater just still remember that childhood feeling, the childhood excitement of everything being pink. And that's another thing that I love about this movie is that it's made me like pink again. you know? Because it's like, for me, like growing up, all of a sudden the girly things aren't cool anymore and you're not allowed to be girly, or it's like, oh, you like that? Well, that's too girly for you. And it's just like, well, can people just enjoy things maybe? I was never like a pink girly, as if my room wasn't like Pepto-Bismol pink for like the longest time.
I was literally just gonna like yell into the microphone at you.
Yeah. But like I don't remember a lot of things. Like my favorite color was never pink. I never gravitated to like pink clothes. But then I was shopping for my outfit for this film and I was just like, I love pink. Pink looks good. I need to wear more pink. I really liked seeing everyone kind of embrace that childhood tone again of like, we're dressing up to the nines. We're doing some girly girl outfits. I don't know. It was like healing the inner child of myself.
I love that you say it that way because I think that is in part what this movie is about, right? It's about healing your inner child. It reminds me a lot of, I think it must have been a Tumblr post or something, discussing all of the things that young girls love that end up being ridiculed and villainized, like Starbucks coffee and Uggs and Twilight. And it's just so silly because it's like, why don't we take the things that little girls like seriously? Why don't we take the color pink seriously? When I think back to my childhood, I was always a blue girl, right? I like the color blue. And this doesn't mean that I didn't actually like the color blue, but when I look back, part of me really does wonder if like part of the reason I liked the color blue was because it was different, because it rejects the color of pink, because it made me different in the eyes of young boys, in the eyes of potential friends, and because wearing pink, expressing myself in girly ways would often lead to me losing friends that were boys who weren't interested in those things and were ridiculed themselves if they showed any interest in those things.
I did the same thing. I was never a Twilight girly, and I was definitely a part of the problem of just like, ugh, those annoying Twilight fans. Or like the girls who loved One Direction. People make fun of people for liking that stuff. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to be made fun of, so I'm going to not like those stuff. I'm going to like the opposite.
Yeah. It's not great. It's not great.
No.
The thing that makes me the saddest about this film is that there will be women who will not go and see it for the exact same reason. I saw a TikTok, and the user's name is Bada Bing, Bada Boo, but the last two O's are zeros if you're looking for them. They said, there are women who will not watch it, women who will mock it and denigrate it and say that whatever version of womanhood this represents, mine is different and special and far more worthy. I am so sorry for that pain. And I really resonate with this because I do feel kind of bad for all of the women that will villainize a movie that is meant to teach them to embrace who they are, to embrace their femininity, to embrace their womanhood, to embrace the experience of becoming a girl. Half of the Barbies in the movie, when Ken World basically spawns from Ryan Gosling's misogynistic imagination, become brainwashed by the Kens into believing that their value is only good if they're trad wives and if they're serving the men. And there are a lot of women in real life who actually think like that and will spend most of their lives acting that way, never being able to resonate with and fully connect with a movie like this because they're so brainwashed. And it just makes me really sad. Like, how could you not go to this movie and love it? There's a part of me that's definitely a little bitter, like, oh, sorry you're fucking boring and a loser. But then there's a part of me that's like, no, actually, that's also really sad that your life is like that your life is so fucked up and sad, and that you've been taught for so long to believe that femininity, that girlhood, that womanhood, that pink are all evil things. I'm sorry. I just can't.
You're good.
Imagine missing out on this movie because of misogyny, because of what the movie's about.
It's just sad that like there are people who are reviewing the movie who are going into the movie never intending to like it and then trashing it and just clearly missing the point of the whole movie. It's like, oh, so you didn't watch it.
It's funny to me because a lot of these people are deciding to unleash hell on a movie that is about upholding your true identity, your true self, and not unleashing full hell, not ridiculing Oppenheimer, which is about the depravity of the U.S. government and military and is incredibly sympathetic to the plight of American communists. So it's just very interesting to me to see what people care about. There's a quote in the movie, spoken by Gloria's daughter: "Women hate women and men hate women. It's the only thing we can agree on." I think this really well exemplifies that point because Oppenheimer is a movie made by men, created by men, and starring primarily men. And all of the themes are almost creepily, almost scarily on par with a lot of what's going on in the Barbie movie. And yet only one movie is getting a lot of shit about it. Which movie do you think it is? The one that has feminine ideals and is being promoted and created and starred in by a female majority. So, yeah, we talked a little bit earlier about mothers. I want to talk briefly about the role of elderly women in this movie because they hold a very special place. We were just talking about how Barbie has often been upheld, sometimes harmfully, as an ideal of what women should look like. And yet this movie features two elderly women in very meaningful ways. And the first is sitting at the bus stop when Barbie is trying to remember who is playing with her and observing humanity, kids laughing and playing, couples fighting, men laughing, and she looks and sees this elderly woman beside her. So there's some misinformation going around that the woman on the bench is Barbara Handler, who is Ruth Handler's daughter, who is the namesake for Barbie, but that's not true. It's actually Anne Roth, who is an Oscar-winning costume designer and one of Greta's friends.
Oh, cool.
Barbie turns to her and says that she's beautiful. And I just think the power of that, of telling an elderly woman she's beautiful, and for her to respond back, I know this, I know that. That is so awesome!
I cried so much. The confidence, because Barbie is over here panicking over cellulite, and then she sees this woman, wrinkles and everything that comes with age because it's a natural human thing to have. She says, "You're beautiful," and this woman confidently says, "I know." It's like, yeah. Isn't that what we all want? It's the confidence to be like, yeah, I know. And that's the lovely thing too. Like, that's also how the movie starts, which is so interesting, is like all of the Barbies are complimenting each other, and there's no humility. There's no like, oh, I'm so thankful and grateful for everything. I have to thank all of the men in my life. There's none of that. It's just, I know it's a privilege to have me here. It is, you know, and that kind of dissipates with the rise of the Ken world. But it's so interesting because when you think back, when you're a girl, you have that confidence. You don't have the ridicule of the world around you weighing on you, so you don't think like that. So to see an elderly woman respond that way in the real world is so powerful because it's like there's such a campaign against elderly women and against becoming old, and like I feel like anti-aging campaigns are prolific with all of like the messaging about like skincare products and makeup and Photoshop and what have you. So there's something so powerful about seeing an older woman say that. The second elderly woman in the film, Ruth Handler, who is the creator of Barbie and who is played by Rhea Perlman, is just incredible because she represents the mother, you know, capital T, capital M. And I think there's so much to unpack there with our previous conversation about motherhood, and then considering that she is the person who kind of gives Barbie her existence, never knowing who she would become and what she would become. This is a really interesting point because later in the movie, kind of toward the end, the CEO, played by Will Ferrell, says, "Call me mother," the person that is... I forgot about that.
And I like this because we know that Ruth is mother, but the CEO likes to think of himself as mother. And this reminds me a lot, I'm going to go there. Am I going to go there? I'm going to go there. Of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And the fact that the Dr. Frankenstein is so desperate to create a life, something he can never do, something he will never have the power that women have to do, that he would just go and do it and have it suffer, have that life that he created suffer, just so that he could hold that power, just so that he could play God, just so that he could play mother. So I love that we see the CEO almost kind of trying to fit into that role, and it seems like that's what every male CEO at Mattel is doing. And they mentioned how, there was a woman in the 90s and there was a woman again for a little bit of time, but this is really important to us and we really value this and we love helping young women. And I just love that because I think it just speaks to like the critical conflict of a lot of the Kens in this movie, that they want the power, they want the autonomy that women have to do what they do, and they want it so badly, and they're so threatened by it that they would just take it instead of creating their own.
Right. They make their own Mojo Dojo Casa House.
And on that note, speaking of Mojo Dojo Casa Houses, let's talk about Ken. Kaitlin, what were your initial reactions to Ken?
I kind of liked that Ken was kind of the main villain in this movie, and instead of like the people at Mattel, which I thought it might be, but I liked that it was more like the conflict was more of Barbie and Ken learning to coexist as equals and not just have one of them in control of everything. And I thought it was interesting that Ken had his own kind of crisis in a way and was just like, I don't know who I am without you. Like his entire personality is built around Barbie and being there with Barbie, and because it's like she's everything and he's just Ken, whereas like she's told that she has to be everything and all of the things, and he is literally nothing.
And he doesn't know how to exist outside of a system where his
right.
sole purpose is to pursue women.
Right. And he doesn't know that. And so I thought it was really interesting for all of that to happen and for them to just try and figure out how to be equals in that way. I found his storyline to be more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. There are so many ways that I feel like you could take Ken in one of these movies. I think one of the most expected ways would be that he would be the love interest.
Yeah, and I'm so glad he wasn't. The amount of times that he like tried to advance and she was just like, no. And then I love that they didn't end up together at all. You think that throughout the movie it's going to end up where she's going to be like, okay, I guess I'll go with you. And that never happens. And I think it's great and refreshing.
I'm learning that a lot of people felt that way, that they thought that maybe Barbie and Ken would end up together regardless and it would ruin the movie for them. For some reason, by the grace of God, I walked into that movie with the confidence that Ken and Barbie would not end up together. I just knew that Greta would not do me dirty like that. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like, my expectations should not be that high. It's Hollywood. But for some reason, I don't know, like, the moment we met Ken, I was like, this guy has nothing going for Margot Robbie. Like, and mind you, like, Ryan Gosling does such an incredible job. Like, I completely underestimated him.
Here's the thing about Ryan Gosling is I can't name a single movie he's been in. So the people were like, him? And I was like, why not? I don't know. What's going on?
But
what movies have you been in?
The Notebook.
I never saw it.
You should see it.
There's a lot of movies I should see. They're probably all Ryan Gosling.
La La Land. I don't know.
Oh, I did see that, but I forgot about it on purpose. Don't take us back there.
So, like, this movie is fun, and it's pink, and it's got girly pop songs. But then there's, like, a very disturbing subtext that's like, Ken is actually an incredibly tragic character because he represents every boy you know that's fallen down a pipeline of toxic masculinity. Like, I think back to all of the friends I had when I was a child that were boys that just stopped playing with me one day with no explanation. Many of those boys went on to be horrific people who would easily make rape jokes given the opportunity or, like, try to come on to me, even though we'd spent most of our lives together. It kind of breaks my heart because I think that's what Ken is meant to embody. He's constantly rejected by Barbie, and he ultimately ends up hurting her in part because she doesn't feel the same way about him and because he doesn't know who he is outside of that system where his only purpose is to pursue her. And even when he's stolen her house, brainwashed her friends, everything, she's still kind to him. She's the only one who apologizes. She's the one that worries when that they're no longer friends or that he no longer likes her as a friend. She's the one that seems to feel the most guilt over doing the right thing.
Because he doesn't even see how he's hurt her.
Yes. And that's the other thing that gets me. And this is aggravating, honestly. I remember watching this scene and just being like really irate that Ken took everything from Barbie without an ounce of remorse. Everything that was hers that she worked for. And at the end, she was still kind to him. She was still nice to him, and she didn't have to be. She could have thrown Ken in the ocean and let John Cena eat his blonde ass. But she took pity on him, and I feel like that says so much about the pressure that patriarchy puts on us to be kind to men when they are being horrific to us.
Because you're going to get called a bitch if you don't.
Yeah. Another thing that I like about this movie is it is, I think, very fair in its depiction of men in patriarchy, because it acknowledges that patriarchy is inherently social. Like, there's nothing natural about a man's desire to control a woman. Men don't just, like, become babies and then go goo goo gaga, time to be an asshole to every woman I know. It isn't an inherent desire so much as socialization that encourages men to oppress women. So in the beginning of the film, the Barbies adore the Kens in the way that, like, mothers adore their sons, and it's like kind of sweet. It almost, I think, mimics the early stages of childhood for boys, where they're often surrounded by positive female role models like their mothers and haven't yet learned to resent them. But then that ultimately happens only when Ken is socialized to a world where men are in power, and when he feels the desire for male approval is he encouraged to take on misogynistic views, which is, like, really fucking sad. And like, that's the other thing is, like, in this world, in the Barbie world, where Barbies are in power, men were valued. Like, maybe they weren't the main characters. Like, maybe they didn't have as much representation as women, but they weren't in servitude. They weren't oppressed in the way that women are in the real world, which I think also says something about whether or not the conflict at the end of the movie is about making it an equal playing field for men and women, or acknowledging that it never has been and it never will be in patriarchy. Kaitlin.
That's me.
What was your favorite part of the movie?
Well, speaking of Ken, the moment that he started breaking out into song, and there was a whole musical moment with all of the Kens, I never laughed so hard in my life. I thought that was so much fun, and I keep singing that damn song because it's stuck in my head. I think we need more random musical, musical scenes in movies. It was just joy of seeing them all dance together and, like, fight each other on the beach and singing. And I was gonna say there's no reason for it, but, like, I don't think this movie would be the same without it. Like, I loved it so much, and it just made me so happy because it was just such a fun time.
I agree. I feel like there needs to be more random musical numbers. I think I read somewhere that it was just, like, something that Ryan Gosling had been tootling around with, and there was no serious intention to include it in the movie, and it ended up going in. That's how all great things happen, and I think this is a good example of that.
I think the thing that, like, even over, like, more so than the musical number was that really made me laugh was the Depression Barbie commercial.
Oh, that hit too close to home.
That's when Greta Gerwig came out into my theater. She pointed at me and said, "You."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, not only was it all very relatable, but she hit you with the repeated watch of the BBC Pride and Prejudice.
That was some bullshit right there. Hello?
Hey!
How do you know? Are you surveilling me, Greta? Are you in my house?
I know,
do you have my house
hey!
bugged? Do you have my house bugged? How do you know? How do you know that I've been doing that for the past 25 years?
Like, don't worry about it, Greta. What the heck? What are you doing? So she really came for me in that scene, and that's what made me laugh so hard. Like tears. Again, this movie made me cry, both in, like, existential crisis tears and also just tears from laughter. So
I'll use my favorites list to give my flowers to Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie.
Oh my god, yeah.
I loved Weird Barbie because this is one of the most relatable aspects of the film to me. Everyone has a weird Barbie. Everyone has,
yes.
And if it's not a Barbie, everyone at least has, like, a toy as a child that you just put through the fucking ringer, you know? And I love that Weird Barbie, despite being Weird Barbie and despite having gone through the ringer with a little girl somewhere, continues to help all the other Barbies. Like, she is the person that helps stereotypical Barbie find her way when she needs to find the little girl that's playing with her. I think that, personally, to me, speaks to the collective experience of womanhood and of, like, having a day when you're really fucking going through it and you feel like weird Barbie, you know, getting shoved into the split position and then dragged across a carpet and drawn on with crayon and dunked in toilet water, having her hair chopped off, and yet still taking the time to give another woman in your life grace because you know she needs it and be there for her. Like, that hurts a little bit. That hurts me. Don't do that.
Ow.
Don't do that.
I also liked her dog. The
one
that, pooped, because
that dog.
I had that and I forgot about it until I watched the movie and I was like, oh my god!
When that dog showed up, everything in my life turned on its head. I got my shit rocked by that dog. I was like, I remember you. Where are you now?
Memories unlocked. Yeah.
Where are you? What giant plastic container in my garage are you in? Because I need to find you.
I was just thinking about the plastic containers in my basement where I'm like, you're in there somewhere.
Exactly. For me, I think it had to be the very end of the movie where, and this is like my all-time favorite scene, where Ruth and Barbie walk out into the liminal space, and Barbie asks Ruth for the permission to be human and realizes she never needed it.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh. She's gonna start crying.
Oh, I'm crying on Maine. I'm crying. Uh-oh. And
I like it because it's usually me who cries in the podcast, so I like this role reversal.
Shut up, Kaitlin. And Ruth
I'm over here like, it was a fun time, and you're over here like, ugh.
I'm over here like, the patriarchy and misogyny and motherhood and maternal instincts and sisterhood. But Ruth takes her hand and Ruth says, take my hands, close your eyes. Oh my god.
You are not well.
Oh my god. I'm not well. Okay, sidebar. I was in a meeting today, and as I was in this meeting, I was admittedly not very engaged, and I was thinking about this scene, and I started crying on camera. But
oh my god.
I was watching myself in the Zoom camera, and I got the impression that you couldn't tell I was crying. But then I got a message from my coworker afterward, and she was like, "Are you okay?" She said, "She goes, and this woman, and again, it's all full circle because this is an older woman who asked me this, a woman my mother's age. So it all comes back to the maternal instinct." She goes, "Is everything well over there?"
No, everything is not well.
God. And
I
that's when
say Billie Eilish will be paying for my therapy bills for that one.
Last night when I got home, I started singing that song to myself, and it made me cry.
Yeah, no, same. That was my entire way home from Barbie. I was like,
it's.
I keep seeing people on TikTok now, like girls on TikTok are making video collages of their childhood and growing up with their friends to that song, and I'm like, I can't do this right now. Don't make this my feed. I can't. I'm not strong enough by Boy Genius.
Is this a good time? Is this a good time to bring up the We Were Girls Together bench?
I was thinking about that the entire movie.
Go forward from this podcast and Google the We Were Girls Together bench, and you'll have yourself a good cry. In this scene in the movie that we were just talking about several hours ago in this podcast, Ruth says, "Take my hand, close your eyes." Trying to get through it. I'm gonna get through it.
You can do it.
Now feel. And then the songs, and then Billy's voice comes in, and you see all of this home footage of girls and women.
It was so beautiful. Just living their lives,
smiling,
smiling,
and being girls together.
When I tell you, I saw, I literally just got chills. Oh, baby, you are not okay.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things you can't even. Oh my god.
It was beautiful. Here's the thing: is that like the fun experience of going to a theater that's packed and like full, like every seat is full, is like hearing everyone laugh together. Yeah. But the silence in the theater when that was going on, except for the sniffles all around us, is like we were all going through that together because we could all relate to it and like think of the time that we were all girls together as this beautiful song plays. It was so much, and it's part of the reason I believe, and if not the reason, why everyone came out of that theater, went to the bathroom, and were complimenting each other and like talking to each other as if we were all best friends.
It reminded us all, I think, that womanhood in all of its beauty and terror is such a gift. I will be calling my therapist about that.
Dana will be hearing about this.
Dana will be hearing about this. Kaitlin, who was your favorite ensemble Barbie?
Weird Barbie for sure. It's because like I just kept thinking about the Barbies that I had that I would do that to. It's like those human things where it's like you're not taught to do it, everyone just does it anyway. Like a good example that I like is when you're in the car as a kid and it's raining and you're watching like two rain droplets like race together.
Oh.
And it's like everyone, that's not something that is taught where it's like, okay, this is what you're gonna do. It's just everyone kind of does that.
Yeah.
I love that Weird Barbie was there because every girl, no matter what, had a Barbie that it was designated like, you're the one I'm going to mess up. You're the one whose hair I'm going to cut, and I'm going to learn that it's not going to grow back. You're the one I'm going to draw on. I'm going to put nail polish on you. I'm going to dress you up and do this. I'm going to put you in the splits. Like, it just made me think of that Barbie that I designated because I'm just like, I so badly want to cut your hair, but I know it's going to, like, I'm going to be so upset. But I don't want to do this Barbie, so it's going to be you.
Yeah.
And it just made me like kind of feel nostalgic for that, and Kate McKinnon is just very good, and she was perfect for that role. And every interview I've seen of her talk about this, I'm like, oh yes, yeah, you were meant for this.
Yeah.
What about you?
Perry Naff just really got me this movie. Her delivery of every line was just so comforting. I love that she was a doctor. I love that. It reminds me so much. We have a close friend that's in the medical field, and it reminded me so much of her when she was so, it's okay. Everything's okay. But then when she held up Barbie's flat foot and was like, flat feet, it got me so good. It got me so good. I was like, oh my gosh. So I loved her. So funny. Someone else who I think deserves their flowers in this movie for just not necessarily being Barbie and not necessarily being Ken either, but just being themselves is Alan.
Alan!
I think we should talk about Alan for a second because he represents a very unique place, I think, in the Barbie world. He's Ken's best friend historically. He is oftentimes considered to be queer-coded in the Barbie lore because, like, why is Ken's friend's clothes fit him perfectly? And why are they all so close? And what's up with Alan? So I like the different readings of Alan as being an ally to the Barbies, because he's marginalized from all the Kens and wants the girls back in Barbie Land so that he can feel accepted again. And then also as a queer person, and then also sometimes in other folks' readings as a non-binary person, someone who doesn't seem to fit the mold of the feminine experience of the Barbies or the very hyper-masculine experience of the Kens. So I just loved him so much. Michael Cera
was perfect.
Brought an essence to the film.
I just, the line where he's just like, and once we figure out how to build this wall sideways instead of just up, we're gonna make it. There's something about that. I don't know, it just killed me. I'm like, just the pan over to the brick wall just going up.
Yeah.
He kind of like almost like breaks that fourth wall in a way.
Yeah.
Where the narrator's just like, there's Alan. There's only been one Alan. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of weird. Kind of feel weird about that.
Yeah, yeah. Like, yeah. Why is that? Yeah.
We're not sure why either.
Oh, I love the fourth wall break. It's hard to do a fourth wall break without like turning to the camera and winking these days. Sometimes it feels like that. But I think this film pretty consistently did that well. Like, this was a very self-aware picture. Like, to the extent that Barbie, the Barbie that has been messaged to us throughout the entirety of this film's promotion as Barbie, is actually just stereotypical Barbie. That was one of my favorite revelations of the movie, that, like, she isn't just Barbie, because we know that all the other Barbies are different types of Barbies. There's President Barbie, you know, there's Dr. Barbie. So for Margot Robbie's Barbie to be stereotypical Barbie, I think it, like, really validated the movie, because there was that nuance of, like, Margot Robbie is a gorgeous woman. And
they broke the fourth wall with that one, too.
Yes, and we should recognize that while also making statements about women's body image. I want to just acknowledge that 2 things can be true about this movie. 1, that it is a good, enjoyable film and that we've all really liked it. And 2, that capitalizes on nostalgia within an industry where most folks are historically underpaid and overworked. So I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the efforts of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA and their efforts to get better wages for creative people and folks in the entertainment industry. We will link in the episode description for this episode ways that you can support the WGA and SAG-AFTRA at this time. Strikes. Yes.
All they're asking for is less than 1% of the annual revenues.
Which shouldn't be a problem,
I saw the numbers the other day.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you can't give up 0.6 something, like 0.6% of your annual. I don't know. I'll never understand it. I'm not a billionaire CEO, but this is kind of ridiculous. And the amount of headlines that I've seen that are misleading of just like, oh, this show was this close to finishing before the writers went on strike. It's just like, oh, well, this show was close to finishing before the executives decided not to pay the writers what they're due.
Yeah. I know that you and I have to get on invoicing Billie Eilish for all of the therapy that we're going to have after hearing What Was I Made For the 100th time over the past 24 hours and not getting sick of it, but instead feeling deeply emotional about it. So that's going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to Lit by Moonlight. Yeah, that's going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to Lit by Moonlight. We'll see you next time.
Where we do something.
Yeah, maybe. Bye.